In this video, we're going to discuss duplication and deletion of objects. You can delete objects anytime you want to, and you can duplicate or copy them, which is very useful for modeling and setting up scenes. So we need to make some objects. So this time we're going to once again use a primitive cube. However, we're going to make it more customized so we can have a very specific shape. In fact, what we're going to do is make a series of cubes that look like a row of dominoes. So I'll go back up to Create, but this time I'm not going to go straight to Polygon Primitives Cube. I'm going to go down to Interactive Creation at the bottom of that menu. This forces Maya to be in a default state where you're forced to interactively drag your various primitives in the view panel to determine their size and location. However, if I click this, that option will turn off. If I go back, you'll see it is off now. And now when you choose one of the primitives, what will happen is the primitive will be placed at 0, 0, 0 in world space. So you don't have to drag, it just appears automatically. Now we're not going to run up the cube straight away at this point. We're going to go to the option box. Anytime you see a little square beside a menu item, that's an option box. So I can click on that and see the options for that tool. Now it may come up as a separate window like this, or you may see the options come in embedded in the side of your regular interface. It doesn't really matter, either way will work. In fact, if it is embedded, what you can do is go to the very top bar, click and drag and rip that panel off and have your own separate window. So these are the options for making a cube, and you see you have a choice of having a custom width, height, and depth. So in fact, I'll show you what it looks like by default. I'll go back up here to Edit for that window and go to Reset Settings. Anytime you choose Edit Reset Settings, that forces the options to go back to their factory default state. So I just chose that, and these are the defaults, which you're used to seeing. You have a width and a height and a depth of 1. Now, of course, when you do interactive creation, it's up to you. But if you were to create a cube without interactive creation, until you change this, you get a cube that's 1 by 1 by 1. But now we have the option to change the size to whatever we want. Now, if we are going to make a domino, we should have a higher height than width. So, for instance, I can enter 0.25 for width, 0.6 for height, and 0.1 for depth. That'll give me a more domino-ish shape. So when I'm ready to go, I can just hit the Create button. That will close this window and drop the cube down at 0, 0, 0. So Create, and there's a cube. It's kind of tiny now, so I'm going to zoom in. A quick way to frame up that object is just to hit the F key on your keyboard, and that centers it up. So here's my domino shape. So let's say you wanted to make a whole row of dominoes. I could continue to use the cube tool over and over and simply move the cubes apart manually using the move tool. That might take a little bit of time, so a quicker way to do that is to use either the duplicate or the duplicate special tool. So let's try duplicate first. I'll go up to Edit, Duplicate. Now, in order for this to work, you have to have an object selected. When I choose duplicate, it's going to make a copy of this original cube. So I'll just choose that, and the copy is made. Now, the trick is the copy comes in exactly where the original was. And in fact, it's exactly the same size as the original. So I can rotate around this, and I can't tell a difference. There are two cubes here, but they're on top of each other. Now, I can further research this or make sure I do have two copies by going into the outliner or the hypergraph. For instance, if I go to the outliner, I'll see that indeed I do have two cubes. The original is called pcube1, and the new one's called pcube2. Now, I know the new one is numbered 2 because Maya counts up as it makes copies. So now they're on top of each other. That's not very useful. What I can do is move them apart now. Now that I have pcube2 selected, I can grab the move tool and move that one away from the original. So now I have two domino-shaped cubes. Now, duplicate only makes a copy of whatever you have selected. So again, it might be a little tedious to make a whole entire row of dominoes. There's another trick which uses duplicate special, where you can make multiple copies all at one time. So what I'll do for now is delete this copy. Now, anytime you have something selected inside Maya, you can delete it and make it go away by simply pressing the delete key on your keyboard. So I'll hit delete, and that copy is destroyed. It's no longer in the outliner, its node is gone, and of course I can't see it any longer. So for now, I'm just going to close the outliner. I'm going to select that original shape, and then we're going to make some more copies. I'll go back up to Edit, and this time I'll go to Duplicate Special. And I'll need to go to the option box, which is very important for this tool. So option box, and here's the option box. Again, to make sure it's set to the default, I'll go up to Edit, Reset Settings, and here are the default settings. Now this works a little bit differently. I have a whole offset section where it says Translate, Rotate, and Scale, plus I have a number of copies cell. So what we can do is make a whole bunch of copies at once. In fact, let's make 12 copies. I'll just change the slider to 12. So now I'll make 12 copies all at once. Now, if I was to apply this tool at this point, I'd get 12 copies exactly at the same spot. There'd be 12 overlapping cubes. However, what I can do instead is use this really great offset. What we can do is tell Maya to offset each copy by a certain amount in terms of translate, rotate, or scale. So let's say I wanted to move them out in a big long row. I can offset each one by so many units. And each column refers to a particular direction. This column is X, the center column is Y, and the last column is Z. So for instance, I can enter 0.5 into my Z for my translate, and that will offset each copy by 0.5 units in Z as they're spread out in a row. So again, number of copies set to 12, and I have Z set to 0.5 for translate. And I can go ahead and click the Duplicate Special button. And when I do that, if I dolly out, you can see I have my 12 new dominoes, and they are indeed 0.5 units apart. Another 0.5 units, in fact, just by looking at the grid. Each one of these grid squares, by default, is 1 unit long and 1 unit wide. In other words, 1 unit on each side. So I can see that, for instance, the first copy, which is right here, is 0.5 units in Z from the original. So that was a very quick way to make a bunch of copies and spread them out. And I can make an even fancier display of the copies by using some of the other offsets. In fact, I'll go ahead and delete these new copies right now. I'll hit the delete key because they're still selected. And we'll try again. So I'll pick my original. I'll hit the F key to center it. Then we'll go back to Edit, Duplicate Special. Again, I'll have to look at the option box. So let's say we want to form those dominoes in a circle. So they kind of curve around and meet the original. What I can do is make, say, 17 copies, offset them by 0.2 in Z, but then also rotate each one. I can rotate by number of degrees, and that's 0 to 360 degrees. So I enter 20 into the Y for the rotate. So this time I'm making 17 copies, each one's offset by 0.2 in Z, and each one's rotated by 20 degrees. So now when I hit Duplicate Special, you'll see that they're arranged in a circle and they come back and meet the original. Now, in order to figure out what values to put in there, I did a little bit of math beforehand. In order to make a circle of this size, I needed 18 dominoes, each one rotated by 20 degrees and spread out by 0.2 in Z. It's based on 360 degrees of the circle. In any case, you can see just by entering a few values into the offset of your Duplicate Special, you can make a very complex array of copies. And it takes a very, very short amount of time.